So welcome to the Get Started with Istio workshop. A little bit introduction about myself. I work at Solo.io. I recently joined the company this year, so it's a new journey for me. Previously, I worked at IBM. As you can see, I have 207 IBM patents. So I've worked at IBM for 19 years, and I wrote a book, Istio Explained. So a really simple book to help you guys get started with Service Mesh and Istio. If you find Istio is interesting, feel free to find us on Twitter, and also I'm available on my email and LinkedIn. So today we're going to talk about this Istio Foundation badge. It's actually 500 plus people already got this badge. So as part of the workshop, we're giving badges to people. So if you pass the test, you will get the badge. Common Istio adoption patterns, there are normally 4 patterns where people adoption Istio for the gateway, or people adopt Istio because they want to visualize the interaction of the microservices so they can observe what's going on within their microservices, or they want to adopt Istio to secure their microservices within the mesh, or they want to adopt Istio because they have multiple versions and they want to control precisely how the traffic flows. So in this lab, we can go through 2, 3, 4, 5, but typically this lab is running for 2 hours. Given we only have 45 minutes, I'm not going to be able to teach you all of the topic. But what's important is the lab environment will remain. If you're interested in 1 or 2 topics that we couldn't cover, you are welcome to do that yourself. So given the time, we're going to go through lab 2 and lab 3 today. If there's time, we might be able to get to lab 4, but we definitely won't have time for lab 5. So just level set everybody on the timing. So lab 2 is really about adopt Istio for Istio Ingress Gateway, right? Why do you need to do that? Let's say, for instance, you have a service, you want to make sure your services can be exposed outside of your Kubernetes cluster. You want to expose it securely. So this is when you need to bring Istio Ingress Gateway in, or if you have Kubernetes Ingress Gateway, but Istio Ingress Gateway does level 7 related stuff, so it's a little bit more powerful. So that's a common pattern for adopt Istio for Ingress Gateway. A couple of Istio network resources we're going to talk about is gateway resource, allow you to do edge load balancer configuration, virtual service, you can do your route configuration, and destination rule and service entry and sidecar. These are the common Istio network resources. So destination rule, you can apply policies and subsets for a given destination. Service entry allow you to configure adding external services in your service mesh registry, so your services in the mesh can talk to the external service. Sidecar allows you to do performance tunings about your sidecar configurations. So let's get started with lab 2. In order to get started, I want to talk to you guys about provision the environment. So I have this link I already created for you. So what I want you to do, let me send the link to everybody so you guys can do the lab as I'm talking. So if you go to the chat, you will see the link comes through from me. So click on that link. And then when you click on this link, you're going to get this view. So go ahead, add that to your study room, right? So that's basically us sharing the link to you. The Instructor Platform is, you will need to log in with Instruct. You don't need an ID with Instructor. I believe they accept a Google ID, Facebook, and either Twitter or GitHub. So just use one of the ID they support logging and add to your study room. you should be able to see your lab in your study room, and you should be able to get into a view like this. And then I want to click on the lab 2, which is Istio Ingress Gateway, and click on the skip to button to get directly to lab 2. The reason we skip directly to lab 2 is we don't have time to teach you install Istio, which I assume some of you might already done that. So when you click on skip 2, it's going to jump into an environment that has Istio already installed, so you can play with Istio Ingress Gateway. So go ahead, click on that button. In this lab, as your environment being provisioned, we're going to deploy a couple of applications called Web API Recommendation Purchase History. So, and we're going to wire the Istio Ingress Gateway to Web API by exposing Web API service on the Istio Ingress Gateway using a given host name. And we're going to expose it on port 80 first, and then we're going to expose it on 443. So with that, I'm going to wait 2 minutes for you guys to get environments ready, and then I'm going to demo this lab in front of you, and you can do it along with me also. So as you can see, my environment is still spinning. Please let me know if you have any questions in the chat. So I'll be monitoring the chat and help you out. So quickly explain what's going on, right? Why it's taking 2 minutes. The reason is we actually spin a virtual machine. Let me see if we have a diagram on this. Yeah, so we have an instructor environment, right? So we are spinning a virtual machine. And on top of that, we're spinning a Kubernetes cluster on that virtual machine. And on top of that, we'll also install Istio. So we're putting like the right amount of sleeps, validation scripts, just to make sure, you know, your environment is what we wanted to set up. So as you can see, my environment is actually set up now. So now it's skipping to the Istio Ingress Gateway section. So which means it's trying to install Istio in my environment. So really quickly, as we are waiting, a little bit about our company, Solo.io. If you haven't heard, it was founded 2017. I joined the company when it just had a Series B fundraising. We are actually just announced a week ago that we got a Series C fundraising. We're now a $1 billion company as far as valuation goes. And we have like tremendous growth, 500% growth, really high renewal rate for our existing customers to come back to us. And our entire company is focusing on building solution on top of the Istio and Envoy. So we have Glue Mesh, which is our enhanced Istio service mesh. We have Glue Edge, which is our enhanced Envoy-based API gateway. So the whole company is building around to help our user adopt Istio and Envoy easily. Let's see if my environment is ready. So still waiting a little bit. How's everybody doing? And what's interesting, by the way, is about this instructor environment is we deploy VMs for different cloud providers, and they're supposed to also deploy to the clouds and regions and zones that's closer to you. So we actually pay this company to provide of a lab environment because we don't believe it's the right business for us to do the lab environment. They are much more efficient as a company to provide this environment to us. So finger crossed. All right, our environment is ready. So I hope your environment is also ready. If so, let's get started. If not, just watch me out. And when your environment is ready, you can follow along. Okay, given the time, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Click on the start button, gets me directly to this lab 2. You should see Istio Ingress Gateway on the right side, and making sure you navigate to the Istio basic directory. The first thing we're going to do is deploy our sample application in the Istio in action namespace. As you can see, I made a mistake because I didn't create the namespace first. So I'm going to do that. And let's go ahead and deploy our sample application. So notice this is nothing related to Istio. I'm just deploying these applications as normally Kubernetes applications. So there wouldn't be any sidecar associated with any of my application. The next thing we're going to do is expose the web API service on the Istio Ingress Gateway. So to do that, we're going to figure out what is the gateway IP and what is the port for the gateway. So the gateway IP essentially is this IP which we're trying to grab. And we also set port 80 and 443 on the ingress and secure ingress port. In order to expose our application on the Istio Ingress Gateway, the first resource we need to create is a gateway resource. For this gateway resource, we'll specify what is our workload for the gateway, which is, by the way, this Istio Ingress Gateway, because it has this label, Istio equals Ingress Gateway. And we also config for port 80 on HTTP. We're going to provide this host name called istioinaction.io. Now, where's the traffic goes, right? When the traffic serves istioinaction.io on port 80, where does it go? The virtual service comes to the rescue. Virtual service explains, right, for this given host, that's binding for the web API gateway. Please route HTTP traffic to the web API service in Istio in action namespace on port 8080. Now, you might be wondering why is port 8080 here? So if you do a get service on web API, you can see it's port 8080 right here. Let's go ahead and deploy the gateway and virtual service resource we just viewed. By the way, these are just Kubernetes resources, so you could do like virtual service in Istio in action. You will be able to see the resources you just deployed. You can also do gateways and virtual service. Let's try to reach out to our web API service through istioinaction.io host. Ta-da! As you can see, we've successfully exposed the web API service, which we deploy in our Kubernetes cluster. And we expose it on the gateway using port 80. And we expose it on this host because we don't have real host name. So we use -h as the host name. We can also look at a little bit of the configuration on the gateway, right? So Istio is all about programming that envoy, whether it's a gateway or sidecar, right? Through virtual service and the gateway resource, you can see we've already we've configured the routes on the Istio Ingress Gateway to say, you know, for this domain and port 80, we want to be able to route the traffic as what virtual service described. Now you might be thinking, okay, so it's nice we expose on 80, but what if I want to have the traffic secure, right? I want to expose on 443 and do it through HTTPS. So in order for you to do that, the first thing we need to do is create a TLS secret called Istio in action.io. And it's important to put the secret in the Istio system namespace because only the secrets in the Istio in the same namespace where you run Istio Ingress Gateway can be used in the gateway resource. So let's go ahead, create that, and we're going to update our gateway resource to refer to the secrets we just created and remove 480 and config 443, right? So if it's 443 is still in action.io, I want you to, secure that connection with simple TLS. And how are you going to secure it? Check this credential to make the key answer. It's, it's what we can accept. So let's go ahead and apply this configuration. And now, what if we curl the web API service on the secure port now, right? What's going to happen? To the enter here, you can see the same response, right? We just successfully exposed 443. Now, I have a question for you, for my attendees. What if you go back to current 80? What do you think is going to happen, right? It's actually going to fail because in our gateway resource, we no longer expose port 80, right? So we only expose 443 now. So congratulations, this is lab 2. You have successfully exposed web API service onto the Istio Ingress Gateway securely. And then we can talk about how do you add services to the mesh. So click on the check button and see if I'm passing all the tests. And now it's loading the next challenge for me. I'm going to wait a minute for you guys to catch up. Again, feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Okay, I saw a couple of you, 4 of you claimed the link. So hopefully it's going well. So thank you. And 3 of you, 2 of you already start to play with it. It's amazing. I have all these stats here. So please let me know if you finished lab 2 so that we can continue to the next lab. All right, I'm going to get moving. So if you need more time, do let me know in the chat. But let's moving on to the third lab, which is mesh observability. So in this lab, we're going to teach you how to incrementally add services to the mesh. And by doing that, you automatically gain visibilities among your services. So in order for you to add services and paths to the mesh, we do want to check a few things, right? So first of all, we want you to be able to add, name the service port for each of your service. So like in this case, name : HTTP. So that's something we want to make sure you have it. By doing that, you essentially tell Istio, this is the HTTP protocol. So we don't have to automatically detect the protocol for you. We also want you to make sure you have pod associated with your service, and also label your deployments with app and version. And we don't want you to use UID 1337 because our Envoy proxy sidecar is also using UID 1337. One other question we want you to answer is, do you have net admin and net rule privilege as a deployer who deploy your services into Kubernetes? If you do, great. By the way, we have that in our environment. That means you can use the default injection provided by Istio to inject the init container and do the IP table configuration. If you don't worry, Istio provides Istio CNI, so you can look up into the documentation for Istio CNI and then configure your IP table injection a little bit differently using Istio CNI. So the lab 3, putting in the context of a simple application, is about adding proxy sidecar to Web API recommendation and purchase history. Let's get started with this lab. So the first thing we're going to do is enable the namespace Istio in action with label namespace Istio injection enable, and then do a get namespace on this particular namespace just to see it has Istio injection enabled. And then we're going to review paths and services requirements, right? So we're going to go to Web API service. And first of all, we check, okay, the service does have a deployments and pods. And, we're going to check this name HTTP, and notice we have port 80 and target port 8081. So why is that? It's because this the Web API container is listening on container port 8081. The other thing we want to check is the labels, right? So like we have labeled this application called app Web API and even version. So this is to help telemetry, observability metrics to make sure to associate the data from this deployment associated with this particular app Web API. By the way, we're using Nick Jackson or friends fake service for this Web API, and also purchase history and recommendation service. So we've added the namespace with Istio injection. We've reviewed our service, and let's do a rolling restart. And if we query the pod service, you can see, the old Web API is being terminated and the new one is coming up. We do a logs on the Web API. You can see it's coming up reasonably without any error. Now, if we run the same code command we run in the last lab to access Web API, it's still successful. So this means as part of the picking up the sidecar rolling restart, our service can still stays up running. By the way, if you want to have, guaranteed stay up, it's probably better to have more than one replica. and then constantly test this code command to make sure, like in 1,000 calls, you don't have any 503. The next thing we want to do is review pod sidecar injection and see how it works, right? So essentially it has one unique container and two regular containers. One container is provided by us, which is the web API container. The other one is the sidecar proxy container. So let's go ahead and find the init container first. So in Kubernetes, init container runs first, and then the regular container runs in parallel. So in this case, you can see we're running the init container using proxy v2, and we're running with Istio IP table command. And we'll configure the IP table configuration to capture all the inbound and outbound traffic, except a couple of ports, right? I believe one of the ports here is health check, which we don't want to envoy sidecar capture. The other two ports are related to telemetry and metrics, which we don't want the sidecar to encrypt that data by default. And we also specify, what is the resource and the request for Istio init container. These are super useful when you need to do capacity planning for adding sidecar into your services. The next container we're going to look at is the Istio proxy container. So, but this is automatically injected into your web API service through that. Remember, we label a namespace, and then when we deploy the web API service into that namespace through mutating webhook provided by Kubernetes, we automatically inject the sidecar configuration for you. And one fun thing here is a bunch of configuration, and at the end, we're also using the same proxy v2 image as the init container. And remember, one of the port number we talked about that was excluded, 15021. Yes, it is a readiness probe health check port. There are a couple of volumes also mounted here. The main purpose of these volumes is to make sure the sidecar container is bootstrapped with the right Istio token and the right the CA search, so that it can talk to Istio control plane to do a certificate signing request to get the key answers signed. So that those are the purpose for these. So if you're interested in how the IP table command works, you can do a little bit digging yourself. So this has all the configuration, each parameter, what it means. And let's go ahead and do a rolling restart on the rest of our deployments. And if you do pause, you should be able to see all the deployments coming up shortly. It does take like a minute or two sometimes. And if you continue to run this command, you can see, it's still up running. And so let's talk about what you have gained, right? You added services to Istio, and obviously you're paying for the cost of running sidecar proxy, right? So hopefully you actually gain something. So in order to see what you gain, we're going to run a loop on the curl command to access web APIs through Istio Ingress Gateway, and then we're going to launch the Kayali dashboard. So by launching the Kayali dashboard in Terminal 2, I want you to go to the Kayali UI and, to see a little bit more data. So if you go to the graph, Kayali actually generates a really nice graph. And, you can see the graph is loaded. You can display, my favorite is traffic animation and security. You can see, the graphs are displayed. You can click on any of them, to see, whether neutral TLS is enabled, if there's any error code, what's the request and response time. So you actually get a lot of visibility into each of the requests, right? So all that data is available for you. And we provide more than that. So if you get out of here, if you go to the Grafana dashboard and click on the Grafana UI, you're going to see a whole new set of data. So let's see if we still have some loads. So if you click on home, and you can see, you have visibility into the Istio control plane running in the Kubernetes cluster, right? So you know how many pushes Istio has done, right? What are the CPU and memory Istio has? How many XDS requests has it processed, right? The active connection to it. So for instance, we have 6, right? So remember we have 4 sample applications. This is also Istio Ingress and Egress, so that's 6. And all this data is available for you without you actually needing to do anything. So congratulations. Oh, there's one more UI, sorry. The other UI we haven't gone through is the Jaeger UI. So I want, so what I'm going to do is get out of here and click on the Jaeger UI. So I can select Istio Ingress Gateway, for instance, to see all the traffic from the last hour. And for each of the requests coming to the Istio Ingress Gateway, you can see, you can click on them and, you can see a little bit more detail onto each of them, right? So there's like X request ID, status code, what is the downstream cluster, all that information is actually captured for you. So this graph may not be super interesting other than, you do find out exactly where the time I spent. But when there's an error, it can become tremendously interesting to help you troubleshooting issues, especially issues related to like timeout and retries. Some of the 503, it can be super helpful. That's it for the observability. Congratulations. What you have done is add the sample application successfully to Istio. You observe the communication of the services. You saw the secure communication among each of your services through the Kayali dashboard. And you look at how well, where are the time spent among each of your services. You look at like the Grafana UI with the control plane dashboard. It also have a service dashboard. So feel free to explore that a little bit. So that's it. You gained all these just by adding the sidecar to each of your microservices. So I'm going to take a pause here. Just to see where you guys are, because I'm not even sure if we'll have time for this. Really depends on, where you guys are. Again, if you have any questions, I will be monitoring the chat and let me know how I can help. Okay, one question coming about sharing recording. Yes, most likely I'll defer to the ATO team. I do believe recording will be shared. However, the lab environment is only good for today. If you do need additional time, please follow up with me offline.
All of our talks are being recorded, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so if we have no questions, we have about 10 minutes remaining. Feel free to use the remainder of the time however you wish to speak about things or advertise whatever you wish. We'll be ending at 2:45 Eastern.
Okay, great. Let me go through some of the couple of other labs in case you guys are interested to do it. I might be able to go through portionally of one of them given the last 10 minutes. But in a nutshell, the next lab, which is in lab 4, we're going to teach you how to secure the mesh, right? You might be wondering, okay, I saw the secure icon in Coyote, right? Why do I need to secure mesh? I thought the services are already mutually TLS to other services. In Istio, there is a concept called permissive and strict mutual TLS. So what you saw, it was the permissive mutual TLS where we would attempt to do mutual TLS whenever it's possible. But when mutual TLS failed, we would fall back to use plain text. So this is not really great if you are looking at mutual TLS policy for strict mutual TLS that you would only allow strict mutual TLS to go through. So we're going to teach you how to do that if your security team have strong requirement to say, I only allow mutual TLS traffic for this namespace or for my entire mesh. So in the lab 4, what we're going to do is enable mutual TLS for the entire service mesh. And we are going to teach you how the workload key and certs are distributed in Istio. I touched a little bit early on by using the volumes and the cycline injection, right? So it has the right token and key and certs to communicate to the Istio control plane, which also serves as the Istio certificate authority in the default Istio installation. And then we're going to also teach you how do you inspect the key and certificate for each of your servers and understand how mutual TLS is enforced by Istio proxy. So this is lab 4. And lab 5, what we're going to teach you is how do you control traffic, right? You're not going to always have one version of your service. So what if you have a version 2 of one of your service, right? So how do you dock onto your service? How do you shift, do canary testing of your new service? How do you add resilience to your service, right? So that your service can handle retries, timeouts, just to be a little bit more resilient, right? So when it fails, maybe have the client config, retry it another time. And also, how do you import external services into the mesh? How do you enforce that only register the external services can be allowed in your mesh? We're going to go through Istio network resources in this lab about virtual service, destination rule, and service entry. Again, virtual service is the list of route rule, but what we're teaching you differently in this lab is the virtual service are not bounded to a gateway. So you could bound a virtual service to a gateway to configure routes for a given gateway resource, or you could choose to just have virtual service by itself without bounded to a gateway. destination rule, when you introduce multiple versions, you typically have subsets related to different versions. So the destination rule can help you configure these subsets. You can also configure the policies applied to a given destination, such as outlier detection, mutual TLS, strict mutual TLS connection when talking to the destination. Service entry allows you to register external services into Istio service mesh so that the service inside of the Istio can talk to the external services if you choose to have this type of control in your system. And lab 5, if we want to follow up offline, essentially we'll introduce a new version of purchase history, and then we're going to have you route the traffic first by doc launch the version 2 with no traffic to it, so you can do a little bit testing to it, and then we're going to route 80% to version 1 and 20% to version 2 just to test it a little bit. And then we route all of our traffic to version 2. In the meanwhile, we introduced version 3, which talks to external services. So we're going to introduce service entry concept to you as well. And that's it. That's all the labs. Again, this is the test and survey. So if you're interested in doing the test, which I am going to send out to here. So if you like this workshop, you want to do the test, please do the test here. And if you pass 80%, we will give you a badge. So which is the badge you see on the screen. And feel free to do our survey too, because these survey really help us to make the lab better for you. So that's all I have. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions. One last thing I would say, this lab, so for instance, I'm in lab 4 now. The lab is in a way that you can always skip, right? So if you do, let me get back to the lab I was, get started with it. But if you know how to secure communication with Istio, you can always skip to control traffic. If you know how to control traffic, you want to increase your resilience, you can just skip to the bonus section. So it's very flexible, and we run a lot of automations behind the scene when you click on skip to, so you can easily toggle to which one you prefer. And the lab environment is good for end of today. So feel free to use them, have a little bit hands-on learning on Istio, and then do the certification if you're interested in getting the badge. That's all I have.